Last time I tried to take you from that initial incomprehension you might feel when you read a complex poem to the feeling that the words have fallen into place and that you can not just understand them, but even delight in them. The question I want to briefly address today is, how do you go through that process on your own? Sound and Sense offers some very sound and sensible advice. Tips that are very similar to the ones I stumbled upon over my years of self-teaching. So let's go through them. Number 1, read the poem more than once. I think more than once is an understatement. If it's a great poem, rich with imagery and dense with meaning, I often have to read it more than a dozen times, contemplating, analyzing, integrating, and reintegrating. But at a certain point, the labor is done and it's mine, and it becomes a pure pleasure. Tip number 2, keep a dictionary by you and use it. Often the words in poetry exploit subtleties of meaning. Sometimes the words may seem familiar, but they're actually employing some obscure or uncommon definition. And sometimes the words are just utterly foreign because they're archaic or esoteric. So, if a word looks unfamiliar, or only vaguely familiar, or if you suspect there might be a subtlety of meaning you haven't grasped, look it up. Tip number 4. I'm going to skip number 3 here and come back to that one next time. They say, pay careful attention to what the poem is saying. Now that might sound a little silly. Of course you should do that. But I know few people who put that sort of effort into a poem. They either expect it to strike them on first reading, or they toss it aside as over their heads. But if you pay in the careful attention that a poem needs, the payout can be great. So, read it more than once, use your dictionary, and pay careful attention to what it's saying. Simple enough. Let's try it now with a poem I discovered, this one not in Sound and Sense, a few months ago. And it's one that required I put to use all of these principles. It's called A Fragment, and it's by Lord Byron. Let me start by reading it through in its entirety once, knowing you will likely experience again that initial incomprehension. So don't expect to get much this first time around. Here we go. When to their airy hall my Father's voice shall call my spirit, joyful in their choice, when poised upon the gale my form shall ride, or dark in mist descend the mountain side, oh, may my shade behold no sculptured urns to mark the spot where earth to earth returns. No lengthened scroll, no praise-encumbered stone, my epitaph shall be my name alone. If that with honor fail to crown my clay, oh, may no other fame my deeds repay. That, only that, shall single out the spot, by that remembered or with that forgot. I was trying to read that utterly emotionlessly, but that's really hard for me. So hopefully you will still notice a profound difference between that reading and the last one. Okay, now let's take it line by line, paying careful attention to unfamiliar words. First, when to their airy hall my Father's voice shall call my spirit, joyful in their choice. Okay, so he begins by saying, when my fathers, that's plural, joyfully call my spirit to their airy hall. We can take his fathers here to mean his ancestors, or even his gods, because they're calling his spirit to their airy hall. And airy gives a suggestion of the heavens, both through the connotation of being up in the air and in the other sense of airy, which means a realm that is spacious and elegant. They're calling him to something like Mount Olympus, and they're happy about it, which suggests he deserves to be among them. All right, moving on. When, poised upon the gale, my form shall ride, or dark in mist descend the mountain side, oh, may my shade behold no sculptured urns to mark the spot where earth to earth returns. So he imagines that then, after he's been called up to join these gods in the heavens, his spirit might ride the gale down the mountain's side. A gale is a wind, but it's a powerful wind, the wind of a storm. And he's going down the side of the majestic form of a mountain. So all of this again gives a suggestion of grandeur. His spirit does not float down a breeze. It rides a gale down a mountain. And when he rides to that spot where earth to earth returns, his burial place, he hopes his spirit will behold there no sculptured urn. An urn, of course, is something made to hold cremated remains. And he's saying here that he hopes he will not find some carefully shaped and ornamented vessel at his grave. Next, he says, no lengthened scroll, no praise encumbered stone. My epitaph shall be my name alone. The words here are perfect. He wants to find no lengthened scroll, no unnecessarily protracted, long-winded words of praise encumbering or burdening his tomb. He wants to see just one thing to mark the spot where his body has been laid to rest: his name. Moving on, he says, if that with honor fail to crown my clay, oh, may no other fame my deeds repay. That, only that, shall single out the spot, by that remembered, or with that forgot. If his name is not sufficient to crown his clay, his mortal remains, then he wants no fame at all. He wants to be remembered by his name or forgotten. So, with that analysis behind us, let's read it again. A Fragment by Lord Byron. When to their airy hall my Father's voice shall call my spirit, joyful in their choice. When, poised upon the gale, my form shall ride, or dark in mist descend the mountain side, oh, may my shade behold no sculptured urns to mark the spot where earth to earth returns. No lengthened scroll, no praise encumbered stone. My epitaph shall be my name alone. If that with honor fail to crown my clay, oh, may no other fame my deeds repay. That, only that, shall single out the spot, by that remembered, or with that forgot. I love the incredible audaciousness of this poem. I imagine a young man envisioning his future, driven to do great things, determined to achieve such success that he immortalizes his name, and the mere mention of it is all that is needed to call to mind his accomplishments. Lord Byron was just 15 when he wrote this poem. I looked it up, and his own grave is marked by more than his name. But I still hope that if from the airy hall his spirit were to descend the mountainside, he would believe himself to have achieved these wild, youthful ambitions.